Okay, so the first technique we're going to learn is what I refer to as verstehen, which means roughly translates to the ability to walk 1,000 miles, well, 1,000 miles, ability to walk a mile in another man's shoes. Now, one of the issues that I think when people worry about what people think of them is the fact that you can be what is called as quite egocentric. And what that means is when you're quite egocentric is that you think everybody else is thinking of you exactly what you think of yourself. So if you've got quite a negative opinion on yourself, or you worry about certain aspects of yourself and that's what other people are going to be thinking, it's like you're putting your own mind into other people's heads to come to the conclusion that that's what people think of you. It's like you're projecting yourself out into other people and then kind of confirming that with your own egocentric view of these situations, whether that's whether you think you're not performing at work, or you worry about what your partner thinks of you, or you worry if what your kids think of you, or you go to a party and you worry what people think of you. People can be quite harsh to themselves, and then they then project that out into other people's minds and think that people are coming to that same conclusion. They're using their own biased interpretation of their self to perceive other people's perceptions of themselves as well, which can contribute to the worry quite a lot. So, as I said before, this is a way of kind of looking back over situations where previously you might have worried about it and come to those kind of biased conclusions that we were coming to before. This technique is specifically designed to use your imagination in a more flexible way. So you've been using it up to now anyway. This is a way of using it in a more explicit way with intention to gain a kind of richer picture of what was going on than what might have been available to you previously. So I think the easiest example I could pull out of my head in terms of whether I used to worry about what people think of me was when I was teaching. So you can imagine you stood at the front of the class, you've got this big sea of faces all waiting for you to perform, and when you're starting out, and I've did this for a number of years anyway, I was kind of projecting my own insecurities and my own bias interpretations of myself into the minds of the students, misreading their kind of facial signals that they were giving me and just completely misreading the situation altogether. So hypothetical, not a hypothetical situation that I was in, let's say I'm delivering something that's quite difficult, maybe they've not come across before. I'm stood at the front of the class, so this would be what we refer to as self-perception. Okay, so there's me looking at the class, teaching away, feeling quite nervous anyway, and I'm getting these kind of real kind of blank looks, what I perceive to be kind of almost scowls. I would think something I'd go and they think, God, they must think I'm such an idiot, or they think I don't know what I'm doing, or they think all these horrible things about me. But that was self-generated. That was purely coming from my egocentric view that I was placing in the minds of the students because I was projecting myself into the minds of others. Now, where this technique kind of comes into its own is because you begin to learn what it might be like for another person in that situation as you're looking at yourself while I'm delivering. So this is me doing my stuff, teaching, picking up some blank faces, being egocentric in my own interpretations of what they must be thinking. If I step out of that into the minds of the students, maybe some of the ones that are getting some of the blank looks, this is what we refer to as the other perspective. So it could be a partner, it could be a boss, it could be a student, somebody even just walking down the street, for example, or a party, or wherever it kind of comes up for you that you worry about what people think of you. Step out of yourself and do your best. I mean, this is a skill that you develop over time. Like any new skill, it kind of might be quite limiting at first, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the better quality information you start to gain from the situation that you're in, that you can look back on and think, yeah, actually, maybe I was being a bit biased there in my interpretation. So he's doing his stuff over there, he's delivering it. I'm not overly confident in the subject matter that he's delivering. I'm feeling a bit kind of anxious myself. I'm feeling a bit worried. I'm not overly confident. It's not my strongest subject, which accounts for my blank face here, and he's just rabbiting on he doesn't seem overly confident anywhere from my perspective. And he looks a bit worried himself. I don't really know what's happening. Which accounts for my kind of blank look as that student there, just staring at him, kind of delivering that lesson there. The third one is what's known as the observer. Now, again, comes down to ability to use your imagination. Your observer, you imagine, is just a kind of detached person, has nothing to do with the situation, and you're literally just looking at that situation there. So you're looking at the other, and you're looking at yourself. Depending on how kind of emotionally charged you feel in your kind of self position, you might need to kind of imagine the observer, imagine the self being quite far away. So you aim to get as detached feelings as you possibly can, like if you watch like a soap and you watch situations going on and you can analyse them because you're not involved in it, and you can make better sense of it because you're not charged by the emotions that kind of these people here are feeling and this person here is feeling. So you kind of aim to be detached and you're looking at the thing as a whole. So as an observer, what can I make of this situation? Well, he's been quite egocentric in his view. He's probably worrying about what they're thinking there. He's probably not stepping into the minds of them learners quite as well as he could. So what could I make of this situation here? That that learner there probably isn't overly confident as I'm looking at them, looking a bit fearful. Maybe he could do with recognising the fact that they're quite fearful instead of projecting himself into them and realising that maybe he could slow down. He could stop and get some kind of feedback from the students rather than being worried and anxious about it. He could actually ask them if there's anything that they don't understand and want to explain it a bit better. And maybe that student there could stick his hand up and say they don't understand it and things like that. So you look at it from a detached perspective. What can I make of this situation here with that person over there teaching, that person over there learning? And then once you've kind of analysed the situation as the best you can as an observer, you can kind of step back into your position as yourself, perceiving the situation, and now you have 3 reference points to give you a richer picture of what's actually going on. So now instead of me thinking, oh God, no, the students hate me, they don't think what I'm doing, I'll think, well, hang on a minute. They might not have known what was going on. I know from this student here that it's not the strongest subject and they might need a bit of confidence building, they might need me to slow down, they might need me to backtrack. I could do with like changing my behaviour a little bit. It doesn't actually say anything about me as a person. So looking back, there's actually nothing worth worrying about. And what I can do differently next time is pay a bit more attention to what's going on so I can adapt and become a bit more flexible as a teacher as I'm teaching. So it gives me a hell of a lot more information than what I had before when I was just this kind of nervous person worrying about what they think of me. I'm like, right, okay, well, what was going on for them at the end of the day? What was going on for him? What do I know about him there? What do I know about her there? What do I know about this class as a whole in order for me to be more flexible next time? Now, the more you carry on with this, you don't have to actually physically do this kind of like, right, here I am as a self, here I am as the other, here I am as the observer, because eventually, once you get good at this sort of thing, while I'm teaching now, obviously I'm talking to a camera, I've got no calibration to come off, but while I'm teaching now and I'm teaching, I'm thinking, right, I'm just going to quickly dance outside into their minds, what's going on for them as they look at me, if we're going too fast, going to slow it down a bit, don't need to pick up the pace, don't need to go for a bit more of an even playing field, don't need to speak more clearly, don't need to speak a bit quicker, is my writing a bit too messy, all these sorts of things which you begin to learn how to analyse these situations quickly. So you're kind of learning to use that ability to worry and think at 1,000 kind of miles an hour anyway, but you're doing it like on the fly eventually, and it will take practice, and it takes a lot of practice. One of the biggest challenges with this is kind of stopping and thinking, right, no, it's impossible for everybody to think exactly the same thing that I am. even if somebody's horrible to me, what was their intention for being horrible, and were they actually being horrible, were they being helpful? If they were being horrible, is it something worth worrying about, and I'm going to let that person define me? Or am I just going to step into the mind of what I know about that person? They might be quite bitter, they might be quite a jealous person, or can I step into the mind of the other person who I previously thought was quite harsh, quite bitter and quite jealous, and actually just trying to give me a helping hand? So the more you kind of practice, the more you develop this on a day-to-day basis, just give you that ability to switch, keep switching, out to observing what's going on for this situation here, what's going on for them, what's going on for me. And from those 3 points of reference, how can I make better sense of this situation that's going on now?